Okay, here we are. Book beat, Spenser, number 6, Looking for Rachel Wallace. I guess many people agree that this is one of his better books. I really enjoyed it, and yeah, there's a lot to talk about here. So why don't we jump right in? Okay, so um, Rachel Wallace. Yeah, Rachel Wallace is obviously going to be one of the main characters in the story. Um, who is she? Well, uh, she's a pretty famous writer. She's a feminist, a lesbian, who's come out and is writing books about her experience and the experience of all women. Uh, Many people dislike her. She's got a very strong personality. She's kind of an in your face type of person. And so is Spenser. So, as you can imagine, when these two get together, the fireworks are kind of going off all over the place. Their personalities do not click at all. But from the very beginning, I think we can see there's a kind of a grudging respect that they have for one another. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. Well, who else is in the story? One of the main characters is the weather, a blizzard. A blizzard hits Boston, I'd say with about a quarter of the book remaining. A blizzard hits, and yeah, I'd say because of that, we could consider it one of the main characters in the book. It's full of atmosphere, and things happen or don't happen because of the blizzard. So why don't we list the blizzard as one of the who's? Also got Susan, who kind of helps Rachel Wallace and Spenser deal with one another. Susan's kind of a person in the middle who understands both of their perspectives, and she's an important person in this book. We've got Quirk, Belson, and Foley. Foley's new. He's a local cop, a little bit of a hothead, but someone who Spenser gets into an argument about with Rachel Wallace. Rachel Wallace doesn't like Spenser, but she absolutely hates Foley and his macho isms, and he's definitely the kind of guy she really dislikes. And who's the main bad guy in the story? Well, one of the main bad guys is a guy named Lawrence Turnbull. He's actually head of the Belmont Vigilance Committee, a committee of conservatives in the community that was first formed to oppose the forced busing that took place in Boston some years before this story took place, not very long before. And he's rich. He's from a blue blood family. He's got political connections. And he's in the story along with other thugs. We can't call Turnbull a thug necessarily, but he's definitely one of the bad guys in the story. He is absolutely one of Rachel Wallace's enemies. The entire story takes place in Boston this time. Last time in book number 5, The Judas Goat, we were all over the world, but especially in Europe. Now we're in good old Boston. It's all Boston. It takes place in the autumn and winter. The autumn's beautiful, the winter's cold, a lot of snow. And we go to different places like Quincy Market and the Ritz Hotel. And I think Robert B. Parker enjoys describing these places in as much detail as he does. So, the whys of the story. What takes place here? Well, the story is this. Rachel Wallace has written a new book, and because of the book, her life has been threatened. She gets a phone call that says, if you publish this book, you're dead. So the publishing company hires Spenser to protect her, but Spenser and Rachel Wallace do not get along at all. She thinks it's because she's a lesbian. He says, no, it's not because you're a lesbian at all. It's actually more she dislikes him than he dislikes her. But she wants to take a nonviolent approach to everyone she comes up against that dislikes her and who's protesting her stances in her books. She doesn't want a macho guy solving her problems by punching people. But we know Spenser, and he's a stubborn person. She's a stubborn person. Anyway, something happens. He tries to help her out by resorting to violence, and he gets himself fired and regrets it. He realizes that she was right, that what he did to protect her was not necessary at all. It was just his own macho pride couldn't accept what was happening. So he's fired, and a few weeks later, 3 weeks before Christmas, we're told, she is taken. And that's what the whole last 1/3 of the book is about, is Spenser trying to figure out who took her and where she's being kept. Actually, he and the police suspect that it's Turnbull, but without proof, without a warrant, which they're not going to get, they cannot go into his home and look for her. But Spenser can. Spenser can. He's not a policeman. So that's the situation, and it's a really nice story. I've mentioned before, I don't read Spenser necessarily for the plots and for the stories, but this one's pretty good. I like the banter between Spenser and all the main characters in the book who show up all the time. That's really interesting. It's funny. Spenser is funny. Robert B. Parker is a very good writer. I enjoy all of that, maybe even more than the stories, but this is a good story. So, what kind of action can we expect here? Well, near the beginning, there's a scene outside a bookstore where Rachel Wallace has gone to do a signing. There's a picket line led by Turnbull, and there's a run-in between Turnbull and Foley, which is really well done. You can feel the tension building right from the beginning there. A little later on in the book, Spenser's driving Rachel Wallace back from an event, and two cars sandwich them on the road, and Spenser is just able to get out of it. They could have been gunned down, but his quick reaction saved them. There's a fight with a thug named Mungo, which is really well done and kind of interesting. we tend to forget, or it's easy to forget, what kind of a tough guy Spenser is. But he really is a really tough guy. He tells a hotel detective that there are three tough guys in all of Boston. One is Hawk, and one is Quirk, and Spenser's the other one. So he has a very high opinion of himself. But the final scenes in the book where Spenser finds and hunts down and saves Rachel Wallace are the other scenes in the book where there's a lot of action and really well done. So from beginning to end here, we have a lot of action. Okay, some of the surprises. Well, the blizzard that hits is kind of interesting, as I mentioned before. It reminded me of my freshman year in college. I went to the University of Buffalo in New York, and we had what is still known today as the blizzard of '76. And people were wearing T-shirts that said, "I survived the blizzard of '76." It's kind of that blizzard here. Doesn't get in the way of the story, but it's a factor in what Spenser needs to do. Well, what else? All of the issues of the '60s and '70s are here. Gay rights, racism, equal unemployment, worker exploitation, job discrimination, bribery, kickbacks, local big shots. All of this comes into play mainly because these are the kind of people that Rachel Wallace has written about or written against in her book. And I think Robert B. Parker handles all of these really well, and really makes us think a lot about what's going on. We already know that Spenser is a really intelligent guy, and that becomes even more obvious. He's intelligent and he's sensitive and he understands people. I guess we can say he's always for the underdog. And maybe we can thank Susan for some of that too. Foley is an interesting person in the book. We understand Quirk and Belson respect Spenser, know how tough he is, and know the doggedness and stubbornness in a good sense that he has. But Foley is a new character, and the way he's described at the beginning is kind of like, wow, so Spenser likes this guy? Why is that? But he's crude, he's macho, he's a wise ass. But I guess, yeah, we can say the same thing about Spenser. Spenser's more sophisticated than this guy, Foley. But they do possess some of the same very positive, endearing traits. Traits that we can really admire. Okay, the other thing that really surprised me was, here's Spenser again crying. We don't get many books in the series where Spenser cries, but he does in this one when he's finally able to find and save Rachel Wallace. Sorry for letting you know what happens at the end, but it's a really touching scene, I think, a really touching scene. And both of them cry in each other's arms. Well, repeats. Yeah. Like I continually say, it's the repeats, isn't it, that gives any series its flavor. The same kinds of jokes from Spenser, the same kind of sexist remarks from Spenser. I don't want to call it sexist actually, but some people would call it that. He does take a sexist attitude towards many women, and that shows up in book after book after book. Another thing that came up in this book that we've seen before and we will see again is Spenser is a professional and he has pride, and even if he's fired, he is not going to give up. He says, well, I have my reputation as a detective to think about, but it's more than that. It's just who he is. He feels responsible for being fired and then Rachel Wallace being kidnapped, being taken. He thinks it's his fault, even though she was the one that fired him. He shouldn't have been fired. And if he hadn't been fired, he would have been there. And if he'd been there, she wouldn't have been kidnapped. So it's his responsibility to get her, to find her. And he does. Cooking comes up again. In some of the future books, there's going to be way too much cooking. But in this book, just the right amount. It's fun. The cooking means Spenser. Spenser is the one who loves cooking. And women are always surprised about this. Like, here's this tough guy, yet, wow, he can cook. And he's not just, well, he says, that's a sexist remark, because if a woman could cook what I cook, what I'm capable of cooking, you'd think nothing of it. But since it's me, since it's a man, you think it's something special, but it's not. You're a sexist. It's kind of an interesting way of thinking. And then Rachel Wallace. Well, it's the first time we meet her, of course, but in future books, she will show up one or two more times. Guess what? I've mentioned it before, but this seems to happen a lot. She's going to show up in Catskill Eagle, and a lot of things happen again in Catskill Eagle, and a lot of people show up again in Catskill Eagles. That's book number 12, so please look forward to that. That's probably my favorite Spenser book, and a lot of people I know also say it's theirs for similar but maybe different reasons. So that's what we've got here. And let's take a look now. Sorry about that. Let's take a look now at some of my favorite quotes in the story. So the book opens like this. Loch Ober's restaurant is on Winter Place, which is an alley off Winter Street, just down from the Common. It is old Boston in the way the Custom House Tower is old Boston. The decor is plain. The waiters wear tuxedos. There are private dining rooms. Downstairs is a room which used to be the men's bar until it was liberated one lunchtime by a group of humorless women who got into a shouting match with a priest. Now anybody can go in there and do what they want. They take master charge. I didn't need master charge. I wasn't paying. John Tickner was paying. And he didn't need master charge because he was paying with the company's money. So John Tickner represents Rachel Wallace's publishing company, and he's the one who is basically hiring Spenser to protect her. And it starts off with them having lunch and Tickner kind of trying to size up Spenser. So during lunch, he asks him, talking about what Spenser's drinking. Spenser says, I don't like it. I like beer. And you always do what you like? Almost always. Sometimes I can't. He sipped some more Negroni. Sipping didn't look easy for him. What might prevent you? He said. I might have to do something I don't like in order to get to do something I like a lot. Tickner smiled a little. Metaphysical, he said. I waited. I knew he was trying to size me up. That was okay. I was used to that. People didn't know anything about hiring someone like me, and they almost always vamped around for a while. I think Robert B. Parker always does a good job at the beginning of the books, kind of trying to set the scene and showing us who Spenser's dealing with. The conversation continues. Tickner asks, and you've been on the police? I nodded. And you were dismissed? Yeah. Why? They said I was intractable. Were they right? Yeah. The waiter brought our entree. I'm told that you're quite tough. You betcha, I said. I was debating here today whether to have lobster Savannah or just eat one of the chairs. Tickner smiled again, but not like he wanted me to marry his sister. I was told that you were, I believe the phrase was, and I'm quoting, a smart-mouthed bastard, though it was not said without affection. I said, phew. Okay, so, yeah, again, what's the thing here that we're to know about Spenser? Yeah, he's a wise guy. He's a pain in the ass. And he doesn't really give a shit at all what anyone thinks about him. Take it or leave it. Take me or like me. I'm not here because of my winning personality. Okay, now next, he meets Rachel Wallace, and this is how it's described. I met Rachel Wallace on a bright October day when Tickner and I walked down from his office across the common and the public garden through the early turn of fall foliage and visited her in her room at the Ritz. She didn't look like Carrie Nation. She looked like a pleasant woman about my age with a Diane von Furstenberg dress on and some lipstick, and her hair long and black and clean. Tickner introduced us. She shook hands firmly and looked at me carefully. If I had tires, she'd have kicked them. Well, you're better than I expected, she said. What did you expect? I said. A wide-assed ex-policeman with bad breath wearing an Anderson Little suit. Everybody makes mistakes, I said. Let's have as few as possible between us, she said. To ensure that, I think we need to talk, but not here. I hate hotel rooms. We'll go down to the bar. Oh yeah, that's another thing that Spenser and Rachel Wallace have in common. They both love drinking. Spenser mainly sticks to beer, but he does love to drink. And Rachel Wallace is a very, very strong drinker. She drinks a lot, and it never really seems to affect her. Okay, and a little bit more between them. John has warned me that you are a jokester. Well, I am not. If we're to have any kind of successful association, you'd best understand right now that I do not enjoy humor. whether or not successful. Then Spenser says, okay, if now and then I enjoy a wry inward smile if struck by one of life's vagaries. She turned to Tickner and said, John, he won't do. Get rid of him. Tickner took a big drink of his martini. Rachel, damn it, he's the best around at what we need. You did needle him about the beer. Be reasonable, Rachel. Okay. Yeah, so you can see from the beginning they do not get along, do they? Spenser asks her about the telephone call, the threatening call that she got. She says, yeah, it was a man's voice. He called me a dyke, a fucking dyke, as I recall. And he told me if that book was published, I'd be dead the day it hit the streets. Books don't hit the streets, I said. Newspapers do. The idiot can't get his cliches straight. Okay. And, well, she's describing, Spenser asks her what the book is about. And she says, it began as a book about sexual prejudice, discrimination in the job market against women, gay people, and specifically gay women. But it has expanded. Sexual prejudice goes hand in hand with other forms of corruption. Violation of the equal employment laws is often accompanied by violation of other laws, bribery, kickbacks, racket tie-ins. I have named names as I found them. A lot of people will be hurt by my book. All of them deserve it. Corporations, Tickner said, local government agencies, politicians, City Hall, the Roman Catholic Church. She has taken on a lot of the local power structure. Is it all Greater Boston? Yes, she said. I use it as a microcosm. Okay. Let me end there. Like I said, it's a really good book with two strong characters, two strong personalities. But in the end, we get a happy ending, and Spenser comes through and has a friend for life. Rachel Wallace tells him, I will always love you. And that made me cry too. See you next time. Thanks a lot.